Got the sunshine on the shelf. Allow me to introduce myself. Stoner Story Witch.
Story and creativity as like not being the silo genius in the tower, like it's a connective practice and a collective practice, and there's really nothing new, but that's okay and that's good because we all get to be in conversation with each other. So I don't know, I feel you. The love interest in a lot of romance or romantasy like activates someone's animus, like they activate that part of them that's like, wait, I've been settling for the conventional. I've been settling for the safe. I've just been doing like autopilot, but there's a whole world out here and I could be a different person in this world. So I very much agree with what you're saying about like this journey that a lot of these very popular heroines go on. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Stoner Story Witch. My name is Kristyn, and I am so grateful to be hosting this podcast on the lands of the Chorotega people, colonially known as Costa Rica. I am very excited to share today's episode on the full moon in Aries. My episode today is with Gina Cadlick, who is a writer, astrologer, and teacher. Her work bridges the literary and the spiritual, the magical and the mundane. She works with writers and artists who know that creative living and the business of making a creative living don't have to cancel each other out. She is a writer by vocation and by practice. I had her on the show to promote the paperback release of her memoir, Heretic, A Queer Revolt Against Evangelicalism, Empires, and the Lies We Are Sold, now available for purchase through your favorite independent bookstore. Her writings about culture, faith, and more have appeared in Elle, Nylon, Oh, the Oprah Magazine, Allure, Catapult, Literary Hub, Autostraddle, and more. My personal favorite is her Disney column at Long Reads. You can follow her Substack, Astrology for Writers. As always, please check the show notes for links to anything that is referenced in this podcast and all of Gina's work. In today's episode, we talk about romantasy and memoir and queerness and astrology. In particular, how can astrology give us radical permission to do the things we want? Like when your Mercury placement might suggest you start a podcast. We talk about how a creative practice is a spiritual journey, the ways that what we create us, and can often be a way to transmute and process shame. We also talk about how we can resource ourselves for the revolution, whether that is a Dungeons and Dragons practice or a sourdough practice. Anything that enables us to practice saying no, setting boundaries, taking risks in safe and earnest ways and places. It was such a treat having Gina on the podcast. I really hope you enjoy it. So without any further ado, here is my conversation with Gina. Welcome to the Stoner Story Witch, Gina. I'm so excited to have you on.
And I'm so excited to be here. And also, it's an amazing name of a podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It sort of was a download that came to me where I was like, what is, it was actually Stoner Disney Witch at first. And then I was like copyright or trademark or whatever, maybe that like wouldn't, and I think story makes more sense. But then I was like, what is that about? And then I kind of was thinking like, well, what's the question that sort of each of those is maybe answering? And so part of the podcast is figuring out like, what are the questions? And so some of the questions I'm asking you are sort of getting into that, like, you know, how do stories guide us on our liberatory path? You know, maybe it's a plant ally or an embodied practice that kind of like sets the stage for a spiritual or creative practice. And then, and like how do you connect it? To me, being a witch is just like kind of a radical commitment to collective liberation, in the face of fascism and whatnot. And so then it's, just kind of like, what's it in service of? And yeah, anyway, thank you for, thank you for that. I don't feel like I don't feel like I came up with the name, and it's always felt a little clunky. So it feels like a treat that you like it.
No, I mean, I love it's like, stoner story. It's like some nice alliteration. And also I hear what you're saying though, with the download aspect of it, in the sense of, is this even something I did? My wife is very much of that like mindset. Like, is it my idea? Is it my tarot spread? Or is it just Mercury giving me things? And
Yes.
porque no los dos. Like, it's
Right.
very, like, both at the same time.
Exactly. So yeah, and I think that that's what feels really, really juicy and kind of spiritually connected, is when there is kind of like, it feels like it's not just me, and then that makes it feel less lonely, which a lot of times it can be when you're starting out on a thing. So
Yeah. And especially when folks are starting like in, out of a creative writing classroom, or out of just like the capitalist air that we're all breathing here in the US. And it's so much work, I think, to unpack and deconstruct story and creativity as like not being the genius in the tower. Like, it's a connective practice and a collective practice, and there's really nothing new, but that's okay, and that's good, because we all get to be in conversation with each other. So I don't know, I feel you.
We kind of already went on a little tangent, which makes me just very excited for the rest of our conversation. Yeah. But I do want to officially introduce you to in the podcast. And this is a question I borrow from Carmen Spaniola, who I know got it from her teacher, Desiree Adaway. But it is, what are the identities that you lead with?
I lead with writer. I lead with, if we're situating myself in time and space and context, I am a cis white woman, very high femme. Femme is camp, womanhood is camp, and I delight in all of it. I don't wear pants, I wear dresses, like makeup and jewelry and all the fun things. Queer AF. I use both queer and lesbian, and I partly feel really strongly about using the word lesbian, even though I know it's very complicated among queer women and folks, because to me, lesbian isn't just like indicative of how I live my life, but it's indicative of a politic that decenters men, and that actively decenters heteronormativity, and actively questions the structures that are built around patriarchy, like here in the US, like racism, like white supremacy, rather, I should say, is very much also built around the exchange of capital between white men, and such, and so on and so forth. I lead also with witch these days. It's a word that took me a really long time to come to. I guess I would call myself spiritual, but I think I'm too I think I'm too, by virtue of being an astrologer and having worked in this industry for a number of years now, I think I'm a little too aware of all of the spiritual but not religious new age girlies. And I hesitate to sometimes use, even though that is a word that actively resonates. I sometimes hesitate to call myself spiritual in that way. So I tend to lead with witch, and that is also very much informed by the fact that I brought up in evangelical Christianity, in like white, rural, conservative America, and had a really radical deconstruction process, is what in hindsight I could call it. Yeah.
Which is what we're here to talk about.
Yeah, which is what we're here to talk about. And also, and I live in New York City. I've been here I'm a few months shy of 10 years. So I'm about to hit my 10-year mark here. And of course, like, we are situated here in Queens on Lenape land. So that is where I'm at. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's a beautiful question. It's also a huge question.
It's a huge question, but sometimes it's just one that I actually really like asking people in like small groups that I facilitate too, because the more you do it, the more people can also kind of see that like, well, my identity today might be a little bit different than what I led with last month because I'm in the midst of something that just feels. And so I think there's something, it's a really fun one to be playing with too. So
Yeah, and it's also very, I appreciate it because, like, my wife is non-binary and bisexual and Mercury ruled. And I feel like I'm very Saturn, very Capricorn, Sun, Moon, Aquarius rising, which I think you are too.
We're both Aquarius risings.
Yeah. So I'm like, I feel very Saturn. I like to have a definition. I like to know the boundary. I like to know the rule. Like to know what things are and what they aren't. And my wife has really helped me. And we were best friends for like years before we got together. But they've really helped me to like expand that it's not a binary all the time.
Yeah.
And that, as you're saying, what you lead with can be different day in and day out.
Yeah.
And that's really something that continues to challenge my perspective on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's also what's really interesting about just even having a podcast is like, it kind of does, it's just this moment in time. And I think that a lot of that is also like, as an astrologer too, it's like, well, this is what is happening for this person with this natal chart in this particular moment and place. And so, yeah. Which I mean, speaking of, I just want to say, and yeah, it's like my fellow little Aquarius rising, that we were in a Diana Rose Harper workshop a couple years ago, and I didn't realize that like the person who wrote this like deconstructing Disney was the same one who wrote Heretic, who's also like this person that I kind of connected with in this breakout room until my best friend was like, "Oh my gosh, you were in a room with Gina Cadlick," and I was like, "Well, yeah. Wait, who is that?" Yeah. And then she's like, she's the one. Correct. And I was like, oh my God. Well, it was just like, but then it was just kind of one of those, like after the fact, I was just like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I was able to play it cool. Like,
I feel you. Again, I live in New York. I am so bad at recognizing, like, I'm also very, like, I'm not comparing myself to like the celebrities you see on the street. That's not the same thing. But I very much feel that. I'm like, I'll be walking with a friend. This happened a few months ago when a friend was in town visiting, and we were meeting up on the Upper East Side for whatever godforsaken reason. And we were walking, and she was like, after, like half a block later, she was like, "Did you see that was Owen Wilson?" And I was like, No, I didn't. I'm really bad at recognizing people and putting a face to a name and like seeing them out of the context in which I know them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I appreciate that you also, yeah, I love that you were able to be. Was that the which Diana class? We should do a little plug for Diana here.
Oh my gosh.
It wasn't by Jove. She didn't do breakouts in that.
No, yeah, that was on Discord. This one was like, because it was like the resources for your first and second,
the
like
foundation for the first
and so I think she had us in breakouts by our rising signs, maybe,
which would also make sense.
And then exactly. And then then she was like, "Oh my gosh, you're with Gina Cadlick," and I was like, "What?" And she's like, because she'd been following you anyway. I guess as much as you can receive that, like, you are my Owen Wilson. Like you have put out work.
Owen Wilson, I love that. That's
I mean, which is actually even better to say. I mean, okay, we don't need to be judging. We can like just put that evangelical, but that you have work in the world that like really resonated with me, and where I'm locating myself in the podcast and in space time is that, before my little eclipse break, I even said on my podcast, like, okay, this is like year 2 of the podcast, and like, what's the difference from like 1 to 2, and it's collaborating. And, I just started a Substack this year. And so I was, I've been following people on Substack, and I've started commenting on people's things and noticing that, like, maybe based on I don't know, but like, then people are like finding my Substack. And then I was like, okay, maybe like I can reach out to a couple of people this year that I follow, that I have a parasocial relationship with, and just like put myself out there as like, hey, like fellow person in the world, like, we can connect, we can collaborate. And then as you're promoting the book that we are here to promote, just put it out there in one of your newsletters of like, invite me onto your podcast. Yeah. And I just was like, oh my gosh, like if this is not literally the universe being like, well, here you go.
There's a literal invitation to do this.
A literal invitation to somebody who has consented to be receiving invites, and like I can tolerate your, like I can I can receive your no. And it was so lovely. And it's coming out on the full moon in Aries, which has been a really, really fun lunation that I've been working with the last couple of years, because it's, our third house. It's kind of, like this cardinal energy of, kind of reaching out to community for like accountability in a creative practice, sort of. So it just feels kind of nice that it's like, I'm just widening my community a little bit.
I love it. I so appreciate that you invited me on. And also congrats on year 2, because good Lord, like podcasting is hard, and it's a significant amount. It's a labor of love.
It totally, I mean, so is writing. So is writing.
And, podcasting, like writing in the early years, no one's making money off of this.
No.
Like, it's funny. I think maybe because, I'll just refer to Meg as like my wife for the duration, because I am a wife guy. And I really love getting to say my wife. It's really nice. We've like just only been married like 9 months. So I'm always like, my wife. It's very nice.
My wife.
But I think because Meg is certainly pretty high profile within the tarot world, and I have my own weird niches that have attention in astrology, and it's the same with our third co-host, B. Skolnick, for numerology. We get asked by a fair number of people how much money we make on Call Your Coven. And we're like, LOL, it's very funny that you think this is a money-making endeavor. We do it because we like talking to each other. Like there's no, we have a supportive Patreon, which which I'm so grateful for, because it helps to offset the maintenance cost.
Totally.
But it's wild how much I think so many people conflate visibility or
yes.
Yeah, I'll just say visibility. They conflate visibility with material or financial success. And those are not the same.
No.
At all.
There's actually a huge, almost like a risk of being super visible and saying certain things when you don't have the money to, potentially provide yourself security should the need arise or what have you. So it's like.
But thank you for that generous introduction. And I can already tell we're going to have a million tangents, which I'm so excited about.
We'll just have to have you back.
No, truly. But also it's between ADHD brain and Mercury and me. I have Mercury and Sagittarius natally.
Oh gosh.
It's just 5 conversations going at once at any given time.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm just beyond delighted that you wanted to talk with me.
Yeah. Where is your Mercury placement? I'm curious.
It is conjunct my midheaven in Scorpio.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at how explicit that is.
I know. It was actually Diana Rose Harper. I think she had recommended some astrologers. And so then that was how I got connected with who I first connected with. And then they were like, breaking down my chart. And then I was just like, it felt nice hearing that I have, this Mercury conjunct my midheaven with Pluto. I mean, I've got a Scorpio stellium, but with the midheaven there, because then it was just there's something it's in the terrain that I like to talk and I like to go deep. And I've heard that, Aquarius folk can be kind of weird. And part of my weirdness has always been that I love talking and going deep. I don't do small talk well. Maybe some of that's neuro spiciness, who knows? And just kind of, it felt so validating or something. And so then I think, honestly, if it weren't for just a really supportive astrology reading around that, I might not have even gotten the security in myself to even be I'm going to do a podcast,
Yeah. That's the thing. I think so much of what I understand why people don't like astrology. I understand. I mean, they almost never know anything about it, but it's just because of how it's represented culturally as basically like another version of Myers-Briggs, which is so problematic. And like this idea of like personality typing.
Right.
Like, if that's all I knew about astrology, I would also hate it. Like,
Right.
I get it, but there are so many ways in which actually getting deeply into an astrological practice, like, I think honestly, it's been a really helpful part of my like unpacking internalized capitalistic expectations of my life. Like, it's been like, no, you're not wrong. You're not broken. Like, this is actually a foundational piece of who you are. You just do it differently than they do in school or they do in a 9 to 5. And I think that that is so profoundly like healing for a lot of people, and can really also, especially if you're seeing an astrologer who, like myself, like Diana, like my friend Meg Kane, or Palace K. Augustine, like, or Mecca Woods, if you're seeing someone who is much more oriented toward an animistic understanding of the world, an anti-capitalist understanding of the world, like, astrology, I think, is a really helpful tool in the toolbox for all of that unlearning and relearning.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think it's because of Diana Rose Harper and a couple of those astrologers that you named that then I started following, that then I think that that's what made that witchy collective liberation thing so kind of coupled.
Yeah.
That then when you're, and then when you're talking about like, it's hard to identify as spiritual because, there's definitely another sect of astrology, like it's the tool itself is not indicative of that worldview of anti-capitalist framing or, and that actually, I mean, I'm kind of going a little bit, okay.
I can follow wherever you want to go, where like,
I'm enjoying myself. The way you were talking about how, it kind of allows you to disrupt, like, this is who you are. You're not wrong. It's just different. That feels tied to, I think, how you were even unpacking your use of the word. I forget if it was your use of the word queer or lesbian, but I know I definitely wanted to talk about the byline of your book, which we should actually say, like, let's say it. Your book just came out this week in paperback.
Yeah. Yes, a very long resurrection after it went out of print, but it's back in print in paperback, and it's called Heretic. And there's a new subtitle, which is A Queer Revolt Against Evangelicalism, Empire, and the Lies We Are Sold. Shout out to the folks in my Astrology for Writers Discord, because they helped me brainstorm. I was like, I need a new subtitle. Here are keywords. Help, because subtitles are so hard. And so shout out to all of them for helping to literally like group project that subtitle.
I like literally feel chills. Like you said it in your newsletter that like shout out to my Discord community, but just like the fact that it was this kind of like co-creation, like these people who read it and like what did it mean to them? Help me out with this. Like that just that also just I think my mirror neurons are just kind of like lighting up at just what that must have felt like for you. Feeling so seen in that.
Yeah, I've got to say, like, titles are hard, and any writer knows this who's ever had to title fucking anything, whether it's a newsletter or a book or what have you. Like, titles are hard. Subtitles are also really hard.
Yeah.
And when it first came out in 2022, it was like Heretic, a memoir. That was it. And I think I was very attached to that because I thought at the time, and I was very business minded at the time, but I still was like, I want to be respected, and I want to be like taken seriously by people in the literary world. And I thought that giving it a subtitle would be a little, I don't know exactly what I thought. I just was like, a memoir. That's it.
Yeah.
But I've also understood reading, which I read my Goodreads reviews. You shouldn't, but I do. Like every 6 months, I go on a self-destructive spiral and I'm like upset in the living room reading my Goodreads. And my wife looks over and she just knows. And she's like, get off your reviews. You have no business reading those. Those are not for you. I don't do a good job of practicing what I preach in that respect. But The reviews did, I will say there are a lot of that are really hateful, but there's also a fair number that I think have really understandable critiques that because people like, I'm just like, didn't you read the back copy? But a lot of people don't read the back copy.
No.
And I appreciate that the title needed to do a better job of flagging how hybrid the book is. Because to
Mm.
me, when I'm reading something that's a memoir, I'm not necessarily thinking it's like my category for default memoir that I read is Melissa Febos, like Lily Danziger, Mary Carr. Like those are my default. That's how I understand memoir. You're always in conversation with other people. The work is really intertextual. We're citing other people. We might have a little tangent about art or music in the middle, but I understand that most people are legitimately coming to memoir through like the lens of either celebrity memoir or something that's very much like a pure personal narrative memoir, like The Glass Castle, right?
Oh.
Or Ashley Ford's like Somebody's Daughter, which are beautiful books. But if that's what you understand memoir to be, and then you pick up Heretic, which is going to go from my personal like upbringing to the religious history of Puritans in the United States to my marriage to a dissection of the short story The Yellow Wallpaper, that probably would feel really jarring if my book is like the first time you're encountering something that's so, again, to our conversation earlier about romanticy that we were discussing before we started recording, like it's hybrid. And so I wanted a subtitle that was going to do a better job of flagging for readers at the top that like this is personal narrative plus 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 like a lot of other things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's just just because I love you and your work, I am feeling like I just want to name that, like you were saying, like these people are getting, I mean, you didn't say the word dysregulated, I don't think, but like these people read your book and they're upset, they're surprised, they're whatever, and then they're going to Goodreads. And that just reminds me, I think it was Carmen Spaniola had said something at one point, like kind of like, hey, to all the small business owners or people with high visibility, who don't maybe have a staff helping you with your emails, like assume that, like I just assume that every time I check my email, the subject line really is, I am dysregulated and I need you to co-regulate with me. Yeah. And so it's like, if you think really every time you're going to your Goodreads, it's like, okay, these are dysregulated people and they do not have the support to actually do anything about it. Their signal cry is, I'm just going to take it to the Goodreads comments or review section. And it's like, okay, like they're sure, like, okay, what I'm also hearing you say, I think it's really sweet actually. And what I'm hearing you say, where it's just like, okay, I could do a better job of tending to my potential readers by giving them clarity about what it is that this book is.
And so that I know people hate read stuff all the time, but I don't hate read. I legitimately do not hate read. I also actively DNF. If I'm not enjoying something, why would I waste my one wild and precious life?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I had to read enough shit that I didn't like in graduate school. Like where I had to do it for a paper or for a grade. Like why on earth would I spend time in Trump's 2025 like hate reading something that's only, as you put it, like putting me into like more dysregulation. Like I want to read shit that I enjoy.
Right. With the precious minutes of leisure time that we got. Yeah, exactly.
And like the sweet spot when your attention span actually can be reading and like isn't like being like, I need a dopamine hit, look at a screen. Like, I'm just like, no, I am trying to get my attention span back up with reading, and that doesn't happen with stuff that I don't like.
Yeah. Well, what felt really juicy about your byline for your book, that of course people can order from their independent bookstores all around, and we'll definitely link to it in the show notes, but was that as I started getting into, well, I guess I'll even back up, that your memoir, as I read it 3 years ago, was like really felt like such a companion to me as I was kind of embarking on this. You know, it had been a while that I had kind of deconstructed from like that kind of Christian evangelical faith that I kind of just went that like, I'm going to be a science teacher. I'm going to like the dogma of religion. I'm going to switch over to science, and it's just atheist or agnostic. And yeah, as I've been reading Romantasy, I have actually thought of your memoir quite a bit, in that like, oh, it like this is this, you know, this romance, this fantasy world. If you kind of, and I think I like to, you know, everything's a symbol. Everything is like a symbol of something else, or archetypally it's something else. And I like to think of, you know, what if, you know, if that love interest is really like your, you know, your spark or your vitality or your animus or your connection with spirit. Like just how hand in hand, like, what is it that I'm actually trying to say? That as I was reading these Romantasy series, I really kind of was struck by just how it is very similar to your story of like, there are these lies I've been told, this way of relating in the world, and then I'm going to totally redefine myself and kind of purposefully do the opposite of kind of what I was told was good and worthy, and just like how that and I think I almost would finish reading these Romantasy books, and I would just be like, do people see that this is also real life? Like, do people like, can people let this not just be like an escape?
Yeah.
And that, yeah. And that it's like, okay, so hold on. Let me find my words.
I'm totally following what you're saying. And what you're saying is reminding me of part of Audre Lorde's essay, Uses of the Erotic, that I quote, that I quote at length in Heretic. Can I read a little bit of it?
Please.
So this is a portion of in which she's talking about the source of the Greek word eros, and the concept of eros, which is born of chaos. But this is one of the pieces of Uses of the Erotic. Audre Lorde will link it in the show notes. So, quote, "This is one reason why the erotic is so feared and so often relegated to the bedroom alone," your point about Romantasy. But once we begin to feel deeply all the aspects of our lives, we begin to demand from ourselves and from our life pursuits that they feel in accordance with that joy which we know ourselves to be capable of. This is a grave responsibility, not to settle for the convenient, the shoddy, the conventionally expected, nor the merely safe. And
oh yeah.
And I think that I mean, when I cite that in Heretic, I'm articulating it in respect of like not settling for a relationship with someone who's like still in the closet, a lot of other pieces related to that. But in regards to like romance, like in the way that what you're saying, like the love interest in a lot of romance or Romantasy, like activates someone's animus, like they activate that part of them that's like, wait, I've been settling for the conventional. I've been settling for the safe. I've just been doing like autopilot, but there's a whole world out here, and I could be a different person in this world. So I very much agree with what you're saying about like this journey that a lot of these very popular heroines go on. Like,
right. Yeah. And so seeing your byline and just being like, okay, like this byline literally could just be the revolt against evangelicalism, empire, and the lies we are sold itself could just kind of be the byline for at least the Romantasy books that I have read.
For sure.
However, you know, most of the popular Romantasy books are quite heteronormative, and you have the word queer in your re-released byline or subtitle. And then that just reminded me that you had also wrote, and I will link this in the show notes, the Deconstructing Disney, the princess problem of Frozen 2, because, you know, there's, I think so many even children's content, children's movies are still about, you know, like coming out as this, it's that archetype of like, oh, my family does, you know, my family makes shoes, but I want to play music, right? Like there's always like in Coco, I mean, like you literally just pick a thing and it's like, oh, I'm breaking out from this mold. It's like such that adolescent thing that we can be stuck in this adolescent, like, oh, but I don't want to do it wrong, like our entire lives, unless we finally like kind of somehow initiate ourselves into, or get a community to kind of help us initiate into like who we actually want to be and how we want to inhabit the world. So I guess the best way that I can think of asking this question, or maybe it is just, vibes and you can just offer up what feels like you want to share. But I was just wondering if you wanted to speak more either about the word kind of queer and how you understand it, which I know you kind of did at the beginning, or just what is like the role that you see queerness plays in like the revolution that we are reaching for.
Yeah. So to me, queerness is, it is a word that encompasses a lot to do with like gender and sexual orientation. Like, yes, that is true. But to me, queer is also a really profound like worldview, and it's a worldview shift out of heteronormativity. And just to clarify that a little bit too, because like, I don't know, the events of Heretic took place almost 15 years ago. Like I'm pretty removed from them at this point. Which means I've had a lot of time to date a lot of people and be friends with a lot of people who are ostensibly queer. But like, I don't know, the thing that I tend to say I'm sure someone would be mad at me for this, but who cares? I'll be like, oh no, if I'm describing someone to another friend, I'm like, no, they're gay, not queer. Even if they're bi or what, because that when I'm saying that to another queer, and I only say this to other queer people, but like when I'm saying that to another queer person or someone who I know and trust, that is like my shorthand that they understand for, no, they're still in a hetero worldview. Yes, they're gay. Yes, like I've worked for so many corporate gay men, like Fire Island gay men, but they come back and they're just like climbing the corporate ladder. Like you can absolutely be gay or queer or like bi or trans. I think Caitlyn Jenner is a great example of this. Like you can absolutely be part of the community, but not part of the community, like that, because you haven't unpacked the worldview. You have found the way to make yourself fit into the heteronormative mindset. On the flip side, like I also have, and I would never call these particular people queer because they are straight and cis, but I have, like my wife and I have some very dear friends, very old friends, like chosen family, who act like chosen family and who are not. Because like, again, I've had friends who are like bi or gay or what have you, but like at the end of the day, they're still devoted to natal family above all else. They cannot possibly treat their friends and their found community like collective, like toward what you're saying, like around collective liberation. Whereas like there are some people in my life who are very, very straight, bless them, but who are like, if you're family, and they're not bound by those blood ties. Like, even if they do still speak to their natal family or have those relationships, like their friendship with me is on that level. And they're going to act in a way like of mutual aid and mutual care and what have you. I don't know if I'm describing this well, but
no, I'm following you completely.
Yeah. So to me, like queerness is a mindset that is like, is a worldview, is a mindset that is really like shifting away from just all the assumed societal tracks,
Yeah.
And that also I think is deeply related, not the same as, but deeply related to a leftist politic that is like, we only get through this together.
Yeah.
And what does mutual care and community look like? I feel like a lot of folks right now are like, where's the revolution? And I'm like, the revolution is volunteering at your food pantry.
Exactly.
The revolution is actually like, most of us are not going to be like, in those particular kind of like in the streets, like potentially like getting purposefully arrested. I know that's not my ministry. Like I'm not out here sitting like chaining myself to something, and bless the people who are.
Right.
And I do a lot of spell work on their behalf. But like I'm like the revolution happens in a lot of different ways, and it's being able to understand that there's not like one white savior or one right way. It's like a lot, it's a network. It's a lot of things working at the same time. I'm going to stop there because I feel like I'm rambling, but
no, because what I'm hearing you talk about is that everybody has their own role in the revolution. And maybe one of the problems that we have is that people would read a romantasy book or, any high, whatever fantasy. And it's just like, we have to return the ring to Mordor. Or there's there's this huge epic battle and it's clear and it's like so well defined and it's so large and it's well organized by, a well-defined leader. And like, that is just like revolution.
The internet doesn't exist. Like,
right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like there isn't, all of the things that are messy about the world that we're actually inhabiting. But then it's just like, but what is your, like, I think there's this, I hear from a lot of people that like, like this hyper individualism and like the hero's journey is like such a problem because it's like, we need people to not strive to like, I'm going to be the one and only that can do this thing. Everybody's going to be so, everybody wants to be Harry Potter. Everybody wants to be, Frodo or whatever. And also there's a part of me that's like, but if you could just right size the story and just be like, what is your Mordor? Like where, like if you locate yourself and like your positionality, what is it that you actually need in order to survive capitalism? But like, what are your privileges? Like, what can you wield safely?
Yeah.
How can you increase your capacity for discomfort? And there's just so much inner work there, but that there's still something actually, I think, really helpful about like the sovereignty of your life that I think is also kind of mirrored in romantasy. There's often this like, and then she's a peasant, but then she marries like the prince and then she becomes a queen, but then it's like, oh, she's actually now like, and like as the books continue, there have to be like new levels of hierarchy to unleash. And I feel like that's problematic if you're really trying to directly kind of juxtapose that in our capitalistic system. But then if you're just like, okay, but archetypally, what does this mean? Is just like, how do I give myself ownership of myself and my life? And how do I like demand that's, my sovereignty in compassionate ways, but within my community. And I guess all that to say is like, I heard you in an episode of, I think it was in the Coming Out of the Broom Closet. I'll post it in the show notes where you really, and I feel like you've mentioned it a couple of times, how like, writing your memoir was really kind of helping you untangle that trifecta that was leaving your high demand group that was your evangelical Christian upbringing and church, divorcing your husband and coming out as queer. And then, like I said, if we proceed as though committing to any creative practice can be a hero's journey. And that the things that we create are also actively creating us, kind of that like Octavia Butler, like what you change changes you. I'm curious if you want to speak to like, how did the actual writing of your memoir and bringing it into the world, and maybe those are two totally different questions, but like, how did it create you or change your life?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. And it's so impossible to answer because on the one hand, I just want to be like, yes, it changed me fundamentally. I am a different person on the other side of writing the book. But, and also I do think there is, I think what I'll say is that the book changed a lot over the years. Heretic took a really long time to write. For me, I will say I usually write a lot more quickly. But Heretic was 7 years-ish in the making before it got published, which again, everyone has a different timeline. Everyone writes at a different pace. It was a lot slow. It was like when Heretic was still in my body, when I was still writing it, there was like no room for anything else. There was no room for any other creative projects. Because like right now, for example, especially since the paperback is now out, so I am on the tail end of doing promo for it, which is amazing. Like I'm so grateful. And also like, it's been a reminder this last like 6 months. Sorry, this is a minor tangent.
No.
because over the last few years since Heretic came out, I've been working on 2 different books and kind of pinging back and forth between them. And one of them's a novel, and one is the book that has now been announced. It's based on the newsletter. It's going to be called Astrology for Artists. And it's been so light and so lovely to like be pinging. And I'm very energized by being able to go back and forth between projects. The last few months, though, of like finding out that Heretic was out of print and then resurrecting it and like all the promo publicity and all the things, it has once again taken up all the space in my body, and like there is no room for any of the other work. And so I'm like, oh, that's right. This is why.
Interesting.
this is why it came out the way it did. All of that to say, I think that a really foundational thing I learned early on within the first few years of working on it was just how much what I was telling was I think real spiritual journey around the human condition of, as we've been talking about, unlearn, like what does it take to unlearn like things? What does it take to break apart a life and rebuild it? Because the first versions of the book were very much, and this is so common, I think there's a really famous quote by someone about like how the first draft is just telling the story to yourself. And that's really all I was doing. I was just like, this happened and this happened and this happened. And it was the first few drafts were much more focused on my relationships with women at the time. But over the years, that not that that fell by the wayside, that's still really important. There's the chapter, actually, when I read the Audre Lorde quote earlier, the chapter that's in is literally about the first woman I ever fell in love with and our tumultuous relationship. But over, like, by the time I was, in edits with my editor about the book, I understood that this was a spiritual journey that I was telling, that the core of it, that like, yes, along the way I get divorced, along the way I come out and, start dating women and learning about queerness and such. But it's really, the spiritual stuff is really the core of it, I think, and what it is to unlearn a life and what it is to let go of deeply and earnestly held beliefs. Because like I was a true believer. I was not just getting dragged to church by my parents, which is also a way to get a lot of religious trauma, like instantly. Like that's also a way that happens. But I wanted to be there. I wanted to be front row, like in Bible study, leading everything, And so what was it like when I completely let go of all of that and yet still felt like a person who had seen too much and experienced too much to go the atheist agnostic, like, and I talk about that in the book a little, like how that route never felt entirely available to me just because of my history. That's a very roundabout way of getting at that question, but I think it's to say that I think the next step in this particular answer is sharing that allowing Heretic to be so about a spiritual journey really helped me also then in like the late 2010s, early 2020s, when I was really working on it, to process a lot of the shame I had around what I would now call witchcraft or, and obviously like astrology, because I was also increasingly practicing astrology in a professional way in the late 2010s. But I had a lot of shame around it. And I had a lot of like, oh, but people will look down on me. And I think that writing the book really helped me to process a lot of those feelings and to process a lot of the things that I wasn't talking at. Like there's no astrology in Heretic, which a lot of people are surprised by, but I'm like, I wasn't into astrology yet during the events of this book. Like that would be very much me retroactively putting something on the book that was not true to my experience then.
Yeah. I really loved probably like the nugget that I think about the most since reading Heretic was how you talked about, you're talking about like unlearning and kind of like getting away, but like that shift of like, but there were a lot of practices that were really whole. Like I was in it and I chose to be in it and I'm mourning it. And I want to know, like, I want to be able to like not maybe reclaim, but like, I want to be able to like kind of compost the parts that I really liked in a way that feels really like authentic and true and meaningful here, in my life now. These are all my words because I obviously don't remember, but where you talked about the importance of, or like how tarot kind of created that, I'm going to pray for you. It's like, let me pull tarot for you. It's this, like, we're going to, we're going to, how prayer and, okay, now I'm feeling excited because I know that you talk a lot about the witchiness of the religious rite and how there actually is a lot of, which maybe that'll be a door for a later day, but, that it's like, okay, we're going to create this container to really, hold space for you in a sacred way. And, maybe we're offering a prayer, and that's what it was in the evangelical world. But then in this new way that I'm going to live, I'm going to just carry a tarot deck. And if there's something that you want to, like, I can still hold that space in a way that feels really, and that felt like that really, really landed for me as I was kind of getting into astrology and kind of, and a little bit of tarot and kind of uncoupling a little bit from some of the shame that I felt around it. And so, whether that was your intention, whether that was like this, what you were petitioning for, if we proceed as though heretic was a spell, that other people would read it and be comforted and companioned by the fact that, like,
I wrote it for younger me, and I wrote it for people who were wherever they were in life, who were starting curious about that deconstruction journey and what it might look like. It was very, it's really written for us, it's just for those of us who've done that. Like, I delight that it finds a broader audience sometimes, and that people who are curious about the evangelical right, or how people can possibly be log cabin Republicans, like, I appreciate that a lot of them are like reading the book and using it as a learning tool. But like, I wrote it for those of us ex-evangelical, but also ex-Catholic, also ex-Muslim, like people who have high control, like high control religions, people who, or like sects or conservative parts of religion. Because I know like Islam and Judaism and Christianity, to be fair, all have their, more liberal, like, liberal denominations or groups or what have you. But like, I talk to a lot of folks who are ex-Orthodox. I talk to a lot of folks who are ex-Muslim, and in those ways that they're like, obviously my experience, the details are so different, but the feelings are the same. And the feelings of like, am I disappointing my family? Am I going to lose everyone? What is the world if I don't believe this? Like, that is central, like, no matter what cult or high demand religion or group you've been a part of, like, those are central questions that we all have in the center of the Venn diagram.
Exactly. Yeah, I have the question that I like to ask of, what are practices that people have to help connect to their wildness or their most intuitive self? But considering your byline, I like the thought of like, what are practices that resource you? It can be individually or collectively to revolt against the empire, as it were.
Astrology is one of them. Like, it's very, very much one of them, in the sense that I think astrology, like, kind of in a twofold way. Like, on the one hand, like I said, like, if we're just doing, a birth chart reading, like one-on-one, or looking at someone's transits, it's very, I think, affirming that the ways that they may perceive or self-shame for failing, quote unquote, by the definitions of empire. I'm like, no, you're doing great. Like, you're right where you're supposed to be. And on the other hand, like, and I know plenty of astrologers do not talk about this publicly, but like, it's a predictive art. It is not, like, I think it absolutely has a place for self-understanding and all of the psychological benefits that we can get from it. I think that I don't want to take that away from anyone. And Lord knows that was like what first drew me to astrology. But the deeper I get into it, I'm like, this is a predictive art. Cool. This is what this is like. And it's kind of an art science mix, It's like, we have texts going back thousands and thousands of years of like, court astrologers like pulling electional charts for war or invasion or for trade. Like, so I think that in a kind of perverse way, astrology is also very useful to situate oneself within empire, to be like, I am, to use a little quote from evangelical land, I am in it, but I am not of it.
Uh-huh.
And since I'm in it, how can I use this to understand what the current environment is? So that's a main piece. On a personal level, I'm a lifelong journaler.
Mhm.
Journaling is, I very much relate to the Joan Didion, I write to know what I'm thinking
Mm.
idea. Like it's, so journaling is a main way that I resource myself. And also like being totally real, D&D, like having a creative outlet that is not monetized in
Mhm.
any way, shape, or form is so important, I think, for working artists and writers, because like the temptation to monetize everything is
Mhm.
high.
Huge.
And it's also hard when it's something you are good at or you do have an audience for. And it's like, but I could, so why wouldn't I? I've found that I have to kind of force myself to pursue and invest in outlets that I cannot in any way make a living out of, and just let them be joyful for their own sake. And
Mhm.
yeah, I have an active D&D campaign. I talk about D&D in the book at
I
the end.
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that group really got, like, we started in 2020, like literally a week after lockdown. We had been supposed to meet at our DM's house on the Lower East Side, but then lockdown happened. And
Mm.
so our first session together was on Zoom, like days after New York,
Mm.
locked down, in March 2020. So that game went for a number of years. And I'm now in a different game, also with my wife.
Mm.
With actually Sasha Ravitch and Meg Kane,
Oh,
and also Meg's partner is our DM, and it is such, D&D is so special. I think there's a lot of witchcraft that can happen in D&D sort of ambiently, and but given who's involved in our game, there is a lot of magic flowing through it at any given time. It's really cool.
oh
But
my
that's a really easy
gosh.
way. Friends, community, they come over for the whole day. We host because when we got this apartment, I did a lot of apartment magic, and we wanted
Mm.
a space where we could host because Meg and I both love having people over and having parties and having, just hosting things. And so we always host. Everyone else like takes turns cooking.
Mm.
So our friends call our house like their second home. And
Oh.
I don't know. That's my very long way of saying that I think it's a lot of things resource me, and
Mhm.
community, creativity, games, you know,
Yeah.
journaling, magic. That's it.
Yeah, I love like the playful, joyful world building fantasy.
Yeah.
Like I think like if you can imagine it and practice it with your beloveds around a D&D game,
Yeah. Yeah.
then you're resourcing, like you're literally practicing it then for the real
Yes.
world, right? Like it's
Yes.
the same with kind of, like trance
Yes.
work, right?
Hmm.
Except
Yeah.
except it's like collective trance work almost,
Mhm.
right? Collective story writing, story building, and I love what you're saying where it's like it is just for me. Like we are not, as much as there's a part of me that's like, "Oh my God, like I would watch that." Like I would
We do call our sessions episodes, which I feel like is an unhelpfully toxic open like foot in the door to like
Oh,
having
yeah,
them.
but it's episodic.
Uh-huh. Yes. Yes, exactly.
It's
It's
a chapter.
episodic. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think there's something so true with what you're saying though, and I think it's true at a D&D table and true at a lot of other places. Like, where can you practice saying no? Where can you
Yes.
setting boundaries? Where can you practice advocating for yourself in a way that is relatively not like low stakes, but like that is relatively low stakes? Because I think that
Yeah.
is such a good point you're making, that like if you haven't practiced it, how are you going to go do the big thing?
Right.
How are you going to
Right.
go like stand down an ice agent,
Hmm.
if there's no muscle being built toward that kind of thing, to use an extreme example, but
But
like
but but also not, you
not,
know.
but that's true. Increasingly common, something a lot of us are having to do in our neighborhoods. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really I love the idea of like because yeah, I mean it, and I love the way you said it too. And I'm gonna have to go back to actually hear the words that you said because what I really like is you're like for me it's D&D. right? It's D&D, but then you kind of contextualized it by being like, you know, a community of people to creatively, playfully, joyfully create a thing that is literally just for me.
Yeah.
You know, that is like, it's
Yeah.
not, it's that it's not about the visibility. It's not,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sell. It's like, and that's how you know it's just for you, because there's never like, oh, but what's my publisher going to think? Or what are
Mm,
are my readers going to get upset that I
yeah.
no, it's just like what delights you, and that
Yeah.
it's with a trusted group of people that
Yeah,
like
with a trusted group where you also can like take risks, you know?
mhm,
And like, I don't know, I think it's really helping me to flex some of my storytelling muscles too.
yeah,
Because I have DM'd. It's not my favorite thing. I'll DM one shots for friends, like if they've never played or that kind of thing. Cause
okay.
I'm very comfortable doing it. But like I'm comfortable, but I also then have like a total drop afterwards where I'm like, was that like the social anxiety? Was that okay to do?
Oh,
Which, because there's a
interesting.
lot of the DM does have a lot of responsibility,
It's
which
a
is, or
facilitator role, yeah.
yes, exactly. They're
Hmm.
facilitating the story and giving it rails. And that is a lot of response and like holding the container. And that's a lot of
Hmm.
responsibility for a person to have. And it's kind of why I don't know if you watch any of the D&D shows like Critical Role or Dimension
Hmm.
20, but the kind of forever DMs of those games like talk about that. Like it is different being a player and kind of just getting to
Hmm.
free fall into it versus being the person who's holding the space.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think there's also just a little part of me that I just want to name like how hard it actually is for a lot of people to really have, especially coming out of a high
Yeah.
demand group, that
Yeah.
like it just can't be understated. Like if there's anybody listening and is like, oh, but I don't actually have like trust, like I just want to hold them with tenderness that like
Yeah.
it is like it can take practice, and it
Yes.
is hard and it's messy, and um yeah,
I
I mean, I
would
guess
say
like
that,
I have thoughts of how I've gotten to the point where I have trusted beloveds when I feel like,
mm,
you know, there was definitely a phase of my life where
yeah.
it was not like, oh, just just call up
Yes, people.
just call
Like,
up people that you have all this earned secure attachment with, and just be
yeah.
bold together. Be bold
Yeah.
and playful. Yeah, so
And it's hard too because I will say I'm someone who's very comfortable like and has always and you know what, to my credit, even back when I was like super conservative evangelical, I was still this person. I think it's just a temperament thing.
mhm.
I'm very comfortable like being the first one on the dance floor. Like who
Mm,
cares, you know? Um but I have had to learn over life that most people are not like that. And most people are
yeah.
waiting for an explicit invitation or permission
Mhm.
or someone else to do it first.
Yeah.
And so I think that is also how a lot of, adult friendship, playfulness things don't happen is because
Yeah.
it's two people in social anxiety being like, you first, you first, and like,
Exactly.
it's like you've gotta, and to be fair, I've become much more comfortable in that, even like obviously after the events of Heretic, in which I,
Mhm.
leave my faith and leave my husband and get to and come out and all these things. And I was talking with a friend recently who was asking me about the kind of not recent spat, but like in the last few years, there have been a lot of like divorce memoirs and a lot of like leaving my husband memoirs. And she was like, yours still feels different in those. And she's like, because obviously a lot of these memoirs are really wonderful and they're stories of self discovery, but the people don't necessarily have a lot to lose outside of their worldview. And obviously, losing your worldview is huge. And like
Mhm.
having to shift your understanding of yourself is huge. But she was like, both through knowing me personally, but also through having read the book, she's like, you lost a lot. Like
Mhm.
there was material fallout
Yeah.
and very much a lot of bridges that you burned, but also that other people burned for you that were like, you're over there, we're over here, we can't do this anymore. Like
Mhm.
I had a lot of fallout and
Mhm.
very explicit like loss of community, loss of people, loss of resources, um, in a way that I then had to kind of scramble and not scramble, but like kind of sit in the ashes,
Mhm.
like I don't know. There are a few different images from art coming to mind because art so helps us process these stories. And like both Daenerys sitting with the dragons that have been birthed after having sat with her husband and his funeral pyre for all night, but she burned all night, or didn't burn because she's the dragon, but
right.
or what have you. But then also the myth, the descent of Inanna is so deeply important to me. And, Inanna is like queen of heaven, queen of love, queen of war, all these things in Sumerian mythology, and, descends to the underworld and is killed and hangs on a meat hook for 3 days. Another 3-day resurrection story that precedes
so
Jesus,
many,
but we don't have to get into that. And I'm like, yeah, I did that. Like I did that in ways that were very much witnessed by everyone in my life. And they were standing in either judgment, and then a handful of people were again, to keep mixing metaphors and stories, a handful of people were like my best friend, Melissa, and my sister, Jo, were we sit by the cross with you. We sit by the meat hook with you, and we are with you through, God, I'm going to get emotional. Like, but most everyone else didn't. And so I think also once and someone doesn't have to have experienced that exactly to have had a total life, like, blow up, from which there were grave consequences. And, I think those of us who've gone through that kind of underworld experience are perhaps more comfortable. I don't want to make a generalization, but because being vulnerable is never easy, but it perhaps feels more practiced to that previous point or something, because I'm like, so what if an editor rejects me, or someone like leaves a bad review of my book, or if like I ask someone to be my friend and they're busy, like what possibly could they do to me that has not already been done, that I have not already lived through and survived? Like, there's just but it's also to your point about discomfort and sitting in discomfort. And I think that, everyone has a different risk tolerance. And sometimes you just, being aware of those things is good. That was very long, but
no, I loved it. I mean, and you mentioned the word vulnerability, and it's funny. I've been working. I've recently noticed. I used to really identify with like, oh, I'm just being vulnerable, and I'm putting myself out there. I'm being vulnerable. I'm being vulnerable. And I think it was my couples counselor that at one point was just like, oh, Kristyn, like you're just so earnest, and I'm like, oh. I actually really like, I love the idea of it's earnestness. I'm earnestly reaching for a thing that I want. And then being in practices of, I'm in a community. This is a story for another day. I make sourdough every day. It's one of my like resourcing myself in my community. And it's so like, cool. I'm a rad wife. I like to think. I always make like more than I can eat. And I, in the words of Carmen and Ruben, like store the excess in the belly of my neighbor. But then it's kind of this practice of, like how do we support each other? How do we offer from our excess, and how do we ask for what we need? Yes. Because both are so important and both make the world go round. And we've been doing this for now almost 2 years. And it's just like, I think it goes down to like being in, like just practicing, being like, oh, hey, who can like take my kids to school? Oh, hey. And it's like the D&D board, but a little less fun and playful or whatever, but there's still so much earnestness. And then, if I'm like maybe a little tired or sick or something like that, then maybe I'll, maybe get a little dysregulated if somebody says no, or if I'm like, oh, was I being too much? It's just like, no, I think there's something so disarming actually about earnest people. Cause it's just like, oh, wow. Like, this person isn't afraid of rejection. They're just earnestly reaching for connection, community, what it is that, the world that they're striving for to co-create.
I so appreciate that you've connected vulnerability with earnestness, because that is also a word. I'm a very earnest person. I don't know if I'd call myself a vulnerable person, even though that is true in compartmentalized areas.
Sure.
But I don't know. I'm not like being vulnerable with everybody, obviously. Like, there's time and a place, but I'm very earnest and very intentional, and like, no, but do you want to be my friend? But do you want to do something? And my wife, and I think my wife has really brought this to my attention over the years. She's like, you're just so earnest. Like you act, but then life usually rewards that. Like, because
Mm,
for as many people as say no, it's like there's again someone who was waiting for the invitation or for the
right.
explicit thing. And I think that earnestness is so conflated with cringe in like online
Yes.
TikTok. And it's like, how afraid are you of being cringe? And it's like, I don't give a fuck. Which
Right.
probably comes from being almost 40, but like
Hmm.
uh I just also, I don't know, I see so many, and specifically with like really young writers and artists who are, early career, starting out, just out of school,
Mm,
and they're like, I want to share my work, but like it's so cringe. And I'm like, that's what a first draft is. The
yes.
first draft is cringe. You have to be willing to like sit in that and tolerate the discomfort of it not being perfect, or of like being witnessed by other people as an imperfect person. Like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, I would love for us to have a move back toward earnestness and away from the cynicism.
Right. How
Um,
is empire winning if the fear of cringe is keeping you from
no,
reaching for what you want, you know?
exactly. Like
Yeah.
fear of repercussion and all of that will keep people locked in.
Status quo, and that's not
Yeah,
helping anyone.
it's really not. It's not helping anybody.
Oh, it really it's helping the powerful elite
Yes.
billionaires. That's who you're
Yep.
helping. That's who's benefiting. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So I think this is a good segue. Many of your okay, so I have this question because I also wanted to plug your Substack Astrology for Writers, which is so many. You have a lot of offerings, and I'll leave you another opportunity to promote anything that might be kind of like seasonally wanting to promote, or maybe all the time. But a lot of your offerings on both your Substack Astrology for Writers and your website are tools to support creative practices. If there are any listeners out there who maybe want to begin spiritual or creative practice but maybe don't know how, or who have started but are maybe feeling stuck, like, is there just, a nugget of advice or wisdom that you would like to offer them if they've like stumbled upon this conversation and
Yeah.
yeah.
My only, I don't know, I think it's really hard starting out with a spiritual practice if you feel without orientation. I just
Mm,
want to acknowledge that. And even like you might be someone like me who grew up super religious and who prayed all the time, and then prayer felt very fraught. And so reclaiming it was a whole years long process.
mhm.
But I think it's especially, I just want to say, I do think it's especially hard for people who are coming to this without any background around what is prayer, or
Mhm.
what even is it to listen, like who
Mm.
that's very new for. And I think my primary small tip of advice that someone could implement today is like put your phone in the other room, give yourself like first off, give yourself like 10 to 30 minutes. Like it can be 5 or 10. It doesn't have to be long, but like just like get comfy where you like to be comfy, and have a journal or like a recording device, and just kind of like talk through where you are right now,
Mm.
talk about what you're feeling, talk about what could help, talk about, and that I think that that can help to like articulating those things can kind of help to address what we're looking for. Because I think sometimes when I talk to folks who are like, well, I just need to know, I need to know these astrological things, but like they don't actually know how they'd implement it. It just seems
Mm.
like it would be helpful. And they're like, I'm going to reach for this tool before understanding what I need the tool for, you know?
Oh, yeah,
And
definitely.
that is, it's partly why I'm so glad I found tarot first. And I think tarot is a really great tool for, I mean, for a lot of things. Like these days, I do use it for divination, but like initially, I was using it for self reflection. And I
Mm.
was considering the card. Okay, the card's a prompt. What is this
Mhm.
bringing up? And I think that really helping to, as you had us do at the top, like contextualize, like locate ourselves in place and time, and also just be able to be like honest about what it is we want. Like, do we feel lonely? Do we feel under resourced? Do we want more connection? Do we want more creativity? Are we looking for more joy or more rest or health, or like
Right.
what, just to be able to concretely orient, like, what do I actually want right now?
Mm-hmm.
God.
Man, and like relationally,
Yeah.
that's like it's the nonviolent communication where it's like if you can just break it down to like what are you feeling?
Yes.
What do you need?
Yes.
And it's like just by yourself, just get
Yeah.
clear like what is it that you're feeling? Are you feeling because yeah, I love that it's just I can I relate so heavily with your like the I will speak from my own experience of, and I think early on, you know, like get like discovering astrology. Astrology was a really great tool. I'm so glad that I had that tool. It actually felt really, for me, it felt really orienting to actually kind of have,
Amazing.
you know, like a radical collapse aware, you know, like anti-capitalist witch walking me through my like natal chart and just like holding space for some, you know, deep questions and kind of sitting with me through like, so there's definitely you don't necessarily even have to do this orienting alone,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
certainly you don't need
Absolutely.
it either. You know, like it's like you could do it alone, but if you have the resources or whatever, there are plenty of very very skilled folks that can help you with that. But yeah, like how capitalism can even get into that grasping, like, okay, well, I just, this tool, this retreat,
Yeah.
this, I'm going to like subscribe to
Surely
all
this
the
this
things.
will
It's like,
help regulate me. This person knows what they're talking about. That will tell me what to, and also that's the other piece is like the comfort in being told what to do. And
oh,
so
yeah.
much of this journey is ultimately really individual. And I think something that a lot of folks, not even, I won't say that. I would just like to validate for everyone that like research is also a form of devotion.
Mm.
Like, you know, so I think that because like you see all this stuff on like if you're on Witch Talk like I am, like against my will, it just keeps feeding it to me. But it's going to be like 3 ways you've been chosen by like Hecate, or 3 ways you've been chosen by the Morrigan, or any of these deities, and I'm like, no. Like again, it's
Mm.
the waiting to be chosen. It's the chosen one narrative, like you were talking about
Yeah.
earlier with like Frodo or Harry Potter. It's like, no, you don't have to wait to be chosen. You don't have to wait for that. Like you can
Right.
actually go up and say hi to someone, and maybe it's a good fit and maybe it's not, but you can do that. And the so many of the ways to like learn about the character of a particular kind of spirit is by researching. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like read their mythology, like read the stories of the Tuatha, and if you're interested in like Irish Reconstruction, like or any such things, like I just want to affirm too that like you don't have to be sitting like hoping you hear a sign from something.
Mm-hmm.
You can also literally just be like, oh hey, I want to like start an ancestor practice. Hey, I have an aunt who like sent me a genealogy she did years ago. I'm gonna go sit with that for a little bit and read through the genealogy. Like that gets to be part of a spiritual practice too.
Ooh, I love that. Anything else you would like to promote? I want to say I'm excited. I got the notification that I have a signed copy of your book. I ordered it from your local bookseller. It's being shipped to my mom's for when I go back and visit her. I'll grab it.
Oh,
And
lovely.
add
Thank
it to my book altar for the book that I
yes.
am writing, which is, but yeah, anything else that you would like to promote as we're
Just, yeah, I
ending
so
the call?
appreciate you having me on. Heretic is obviously available in paperback. People may have to like order it, especially through an indie bookstore, because Harper did no promotion
I
and
know.
did not like, which is fine. Like I wasn't expecting it. It was fine. But like, because I've really had to like resurrect this book from the grave on my own, for the most part, like people might have to be okay with doing an online order or some such. So there's that. And then, as you mentioned, my newsletter, Astrology for Writers, is on Substack for now. I've had the newsletter for 6 years. I've been on
Mm,
Substack for 6 years and have weathered a lot of the trials and tribulations that I've written
mm,
about extensively.
yeah.
Um, but they are starting to do some things that really fuck with writers' money that
Yeah.
I am seriously looking at other options right now. So, but it's always going to be you'll always be able to get to my newsletter through my website, which is ginacadlick.com. And I don't have any seasonal offerings right now. It's just the book and the newsletter.
Just the
So,
book and the
yeah.
newsletter. Okay. Well, thank you so much I mean, I see you for the act of love of not just writing Heretic, but then, yeah, like finding out that it's like, wait, it's out of print. Like, and going through all that. And then, yeah, the self-promotion of it, because your
Yes.
publisher won't, and like, I get it. We're living in collapsy times of capitalism, and like, this is just where we're at. But
That's the thing with writers and artists too. We have to be willing to be cringe and to be earnest and to self-promote, because like otherwise no one's going to know. Like no one's ever going to care about your book like you do,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You are the flag bearer. So, embrace cringe. Like
embrace the cringe. I love
embrace
that.
the cringe. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to just continuing to follow you and see what the future might hold. Would love to I feel like we like named so many other like little doorways or other little like conversations we could have had. Who knows what the future holds, but it was so lovely. You were my first memoir of the podcast that I featured, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been so wonderful, and have me back anytime. Yeah.
Thank you so, so much, Gina, for this amazing conversation, for being an amazing guest, an amazing kickoff to this collaborative year for my podcast, for being my Owen Wilson. As I mentioned at the top of the episode, you can check out the show notes for links to all of Gina's work that we mentioned, as well as the various books and artists and creators that we mentioned throughout the show. And as always, if you wish to connect with me with any questions or comments or connections, I highly welcome that. You can email me at stonerstorywitch@gmail.com or follow my Substack as well and make comments there on the episode post. And as I am finishing editing this podcast and getting it ready, I'm just holding my dear listeners, anybody who may have found this little breadcrumb along their way. And it is my earnest hope, prayer, spell, dream for you that you find the resourcing that you need for your own revolt into a life that you would prefer, in radical defiance against the empire, in finding practices that are unique to you and what make you so special, that will enable and embolden you for the life that you would prefer. It is my hope, it is my dream, it is my prayer and my spell with this podcast that you find some comfort and companionship, some resourcing, some encouragement, some orientation, some inspiration to connect with a creative or spiritual practice to enable you and embolden you in your revolt against empire and the lies that we are all sold. Thanks again, Gina. I look forward to having you back on. Thank you to John Williams and Anais Mitchell for the inspiration for the theme song of the Stoner Story Witch podcast, as well as Matt Schubbe and Kevin Carlo for their creative juices for the cover art and the sound editing and production. And with that, I will leave you with my quote from Rev. Angel Kyoto Williams that says, "Love and justice are not two. Without inner change, there can be no outer change. And without collective change, no change matters." Take good care, everyone. Bye for now. I've been all over the place with my little questions that I sent you.
No. This is how I love to do a conversation. I just love for it to be a conversation and not just not the rote, question. No, I'm having a great time. You're great.
Thanks.